Hi, welcome back to the workshop for episode 3 of the Rickenbacker 620 12-string build. Having got all the materials prepped up and glued together for the neck blank in the last episode, I'm going to start this time by getting it all cleaned up, get rid of all the waste that's on there, and get it all ready for the next process, which is going to be fitting the truss rod. And the first stage is to just get this excess purple heart planed down. I think it was around the other way. And there's not a great deal to clean up here, so I'm just going to literally take number 4 hand plane and start working it down. Okay, so that's everything nicely trued up. It's come out really well actually. There's no discernible glue joint at all, just a change from one timber to the other, which looks really nice. I'm looking at it and there is some tiny little bits of tear out on this purple heart. It doesn't like to be planed, and it didn't really matter which direction I was planing it from. I planed it one way, I got a bit of tear out, I turned the plane around and did it the other way and got loads. So there wasn't really any way of avoiding that. But what I'm looking at is if I've got any sections that don't have tear out, especially on one end or the other. The way this guitar is going to work is half of one face is going to be covered with a fretboard and the top of that is going to be cut away. So if I've got any tear out, I want it on the bit that's actually going to be the front of the guitar. And I've got a little bit there. So I'm thinking this will be the back of the body section of the through neck. This will be the back of the neck. So this will be kind of cut away. So I don't think I've got any tear out that's going to cause me any problems, which is a relief. So the next thing I'm going to do is get the drawing out and start to map this out a little bit. Okay, so hopefully we'll be able to see there. I've got loads of material in terms of length, and the thickness of these pieces are kind of exactly where we need them. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark off a rough nut line, which, to be honest, as long as I get it within scope, can be quite arbitrary. So I'm going to put it just there and I'm going to square a line across. But then I'm going to come back a few millimeters from that to allow for a thickness of my nut and strike another line, and that is going to be the line for the break angle on the headstock. From there we need to measure the length of the fretboard from the nut, which in this case is 450, we'll call it 453, which we'll call there. And what that gives me is my nut line, where the headstock starts, and where we need to kind of start removing material for the thickness of the body. So next up, I'm just going to kind of eyeball in the break angle for the headstock. And I can transfer that across to our blank. Okay, so that's my break angle marked out. Now the headstock on this one is very thick. It's 18 millimeters, and I think that has been done deliberately just to account for all of the work that has to be done on this headstock. There's an awful lot of holes drilled in it, so that extra thickness is going to just put a little bit more strength into it. Okay, so with that marked, I've got a really good idea now where my truss rod needs to go. And what I'm using is what I always use for these kind of builds these days, is a double action wheel adjust truss rod. And the reason I'm so keen on using these on a guitar with a tilt back headstock is that I don't have to scoop out any of this material here at the top of the neck to account for an adjuster, which will keep everything nice and strong. So what I'm going to do next is get the center line marked in on this neck, and then we can start setting this up for routing in the truss rod. Okay, and that's all marked out now, and I basically need to put a 6mm route right the way along there. These are generally about 10mm deep, but I will measure it properly, and then I'll just need to open it out ever so slightly at this end to allow for the adjuster mechanism, which is a little bit fatter. And I've set this up with a little pointed cutter in, and that's enabled me to set this up exactly onto the center line, but I'm not going to obviously do the cutting with that. So I will swap that out for just a normal 2-flute 6mm straight cutter. But because I haven't moved the fence, this 6mm cutter will still be exactly central to the workpiece. I've measured the truss rod, it's just a hair over 9mm, it's about 9.2mm. So I'll probably go down in about 3 or 4 passes and just very gently work this material out. Okay, now we have the truss rod installed, apart from the cutout that we're going to need for the adjuster, but we'll be dealing with that at a later point once we've got some of this other work done. I think that's gone really, really nicely. It's just a hair under the surface, which is exactly where you want it. So with that done, next up we need to double check the marking out we did for the headstock brake angle and get some proper measurements on at this body end for removing the waste on there. Okay, so that's the body area thinned down and our headstock angle put on. It's come out quite nicely, very happy with that. I think the laminations are looking really, really swish. It might seem the obvious thing to do now is to thin the rest of this headstock down and kind of cut the profile of the neck in. However, this whole headstock deal is freaking me out a little bit, if I'm totally honest, and we've put quite a bit of work into this neck blanket and I don't want to mess it up. So what I'm going to do is actually do a little bit of prototyping for the headstock. So I've got myself cut some 18mm thick maple. I've got my template. I'm going to make just a headstock and I'm going to shape it. I'm going to put the slots in and I'm going to drill it through all of the machine heads and get it to the state where it's completely finished, in the hope that if I do make any mistakes, I make it on the replica and not on the actual headstock itself. However, I'm not going to do that on this episode. We've done quite enough, I think, for this one. So I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning up on what we've done on the neck blank, and then I'll be back very soon to get that development work done on the headstock. So until then, as always, thanks a lot for watching. I really, really do appreciate it. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you very soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.